The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website at agingpartners@lincoln.ne.gov.
On this edition of Live and Learn, Harlan Johnson discusses Alzheimer's with Mark Taylor. Lita Powell Drake explores triad outreach with Lily Hands and Larry Russell. Dolores Lintel introduces new Live and Learn host Tim Francis. Tim Francis discusses community activism with longtime community volunteer Jan Gauger. Kristen Stows presents the third part in our Parkinson's series with Dr. Gelber.
Welcome to Live and Learn. I'm Harlan Johnson. This month is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And if you stop to think about it, practically every one of us knows now today somebody, whether it's a friend, a relative, or neighbor, that has Alzheimer's. And what we're trying to do is make people aware of the disease. So most everybody has heard about it, and my guest today is going to help us become aware of Alzheimer's. So, and just how serious this disease really is. So, Mark Taylor, who is the Development Director with the Alzheimer's Association here in Lincoln, is my guest. Mark, welcome to Live and Learn.
Thanks, Harlan. Thanks for having me here.
All right. Now, let's find out a little bit about you. You've got a history here in Lincoln.
I do. Most of it good.
Well, good. All right. Yeah. Let's talk about that part.
Okay. I was born in Lincoln. I grew up in the Beatrice area and came back here to go to school, to the university. And I've been here ever since. I just ended a 20-year career in radio, a pretty mediocre career in radio, but I had a lot of fun at it. So a lot of people might not recognize my face, but might.
Hey, now we get to see your
voice
face.
Sounds kind of familiar.
Now, it seems to me that the numbers are growing, but there are a lot of people in Nebraska that have Alzheimer's. What's the percentage? What's the numbers?
There are a lot, and it's growing. So the estimate right now is about 37,000 people in Nebraska have Alzheimer's disease. And that number is climbing with the aging of our population here. And so we expect that will about double by the year 2050, and we'll have 77,000 Nebraskans with Alzheimer's by 2050.
All right. Now, okay, it's pretty obvious, but why do we want to raise the level, the bar, about awareness of this disease?
Well, it's important to do that. Alzheimer's has been around for a long time. It was first diagnosed in 1906, but people don't want to talk about it. There's a stigma attached with Alzheimer's disease that people don't want to talk about their family member having Alzheimer's. It is a disease like any other health disease. And so we need to talk about it. The more we talk about it, the more we increase awareness, the more money we can raise to help find a cure.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons of the awareness is we need to raise some funds in order to try to get a cure. Mm-hmm. Now, I think you said something about of all the 10 diseases that are really life-threatening, Alzheimer's is one that doesn't have a cure.
It's the only one.
It's the only one.
Of the top 10 health causes of death in the United States, and you have heart disease and stroke and cancer, and Alzheimer's is the only one that doesn't have a cure, and it's also the only one of those top 10 that's on the rise. The percentages are falling, thankfully, because of the great advances in medical care of people who die from those top 10 issues, except Alzheimer's. It's the one on the rise.
Well, now, we've had Alzheimer's Association here in Lincoln since, about, 1983, somewhere right in there. What is the mission of the Lincoln Association here?
Well, the association's all about people and science, and those are the people we help here locally in Nebraska, and our chapter also covers the entire state of Wyoming. So it's about helping the people and the families that are dealing with Alzheimer's find the care they need, or find a support group so they can get some support from other people who are going through the disease. And then, of course, the science component. The only way we're really going to make a difference for our children and our grandchildren and future generations is by finding that cure. So the other part of what we do is we raise money so that we can help fund research to find a cure.
All right. Now, I mentioned we're all pretty much aware of pink and how that has become associated with cancer and breast cancer and that sort of thing. Alzheimer's is beginning to try to identify with the color, and I wore the color today.
I noticed you were wearing purple. Well
wearing
done,
purple.
yeah.
All right. So we want to get that message out. That all right. Now, in your fundraising, what are some things that you've done?
Well, the two big events that we do across the chapter, we have the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And the last one actually was not too long ago in the middle of October, and that was in McCook, Nebraska. But we have 17 walks throughout the chapter that start, actually the first one in the nation this year was in Dawson County, in Dawson County, Gothenburg. And so that one was the beginning of August, and between then and in the middle of October, we had 17 walks in Nebraska and Wyoming. And as part of a national effort with over 650 of them nationwide, we raised, last year it was over $42 million through those walks to end Alzheimer's. So that's the single biggest thing we do.
Okay, so we're going to use that $42 million for some research.
Absolutely.
What kind of research is going on?
There's a lot of research going on, actually. The National Institutes of Health they're the largest funder of Alzheimer's research in the country. The Alzheimer's Association is the largest private funder of Alzheimer's research in the country. And there are some exciting things going on in research. The scientists say that they're close. They think that there is a breakthrough around the corner. And you know, we don't really have a way to really know why people get Alzheimer's. It happens, and sometimes we don't know why. And what happens is you get, you know, we talk about plaque when you go to the dentist, right? It's the stuff they scrape off of your teeth. And it's a different kind of plaque, but that's one of the problems with Alzheimer's, is that you get plaque forming in your brain, which means your neurons can't fire and your brain doesn't work and you can't remember things. So what the researchers are doing, they are targeting that plaque with pharmaceuticals. And there was a recently released study from one of the pharmaceutical companies that said they actually had a positive. It was a very small one, but one of the pharmaceuticals that they are testing now in the third stage shows a bit of a cognitive decline pause in mild Alzheimer's patients. That's not a cure, but that's a step in the right direction.
Okay. We don't know anything necessarily that's very definite as far as preventing, other than, you know, living a healthy life. Keeping your brain active, those kind of things.
Certainly can't hurt.
Yeah. All right, now the association is involved with people who, and you mentioned support groups. What type of services does a local chapter do for people?
Well, support groups is a lot of it. We have support groups all across the chapter where people can gather on a monthly basis and talk about what's troubling them, what's happening in their lives, and get some advice, perhaps, if that's what they want from people that have gone through the same thing. We do a lot of education for facilities and training for facilities that deal with Alzheimer's patients. We do training for medical doctors and medical staffs as well in how to work with those patients and their families. And we answer a lot of questions. If someone has a problem, we can help them. If they're looking for weekend care for a loved one because their caregiver's in the hospital, wife or husband in the hospital, we can help find them that service. We do. We help. That's the biggest thing. And our national organization has a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, 365 days a year, 800 number, toll-free number, that people can call at 3 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving if they want. And they can talk to someone who has master's level training in dealing with problems that Alzheimer's patients deal with. So they can get that anytime, day or night.
Okay, now respite care, and in any disease, that sort of thing, of somebody that's 24/7 responsible for a patient that's, let's say, for example, that has Alzheimer's, that really can wear on the person.
Yeah.
And your association does, as you say, find respite care, and sometimes even does some scholarship for people that can't afford to.
Yeah, respite care is so very important because most of the time, I should say, the primary caregiver for an Alzheimer's patient is a family member, a spouse or a child normally, is their primary caregiver. And as you said, 24/7, taking care of that person. There is a much higher incidence of health and stress-related problems from caregivers because they have to deal with this 24/7. And so as they're caring for that loved one, sometimes they neglect themselves and taking care of themselves. So respite care is incredibly important, just to, even if it's an hour, to get them a little time alone. So that's a very important thing that we do. We help people find that respite care, find the right place for respite care, or find adult day services for their loved one, so that they can have some time to themselves.
And I'd say it, if they're out there taking care of someone, hey, you better find someone, because otherwise you're going to wear yourself down to the place that you're not going to be effective and able to take care of that person. Okay, now we talked a little bit about prevention, but identifying is a problem in itself. What are some signs that I may have Alzheimer's?
And you know, I talk to a lot of groups, a lot of people, and they say, you know, I think they joke around that they forget things sometimes and think, oh, I might have Alzheimer's. And there are a lot of normal signs, memory, aging problems that we're all going to have at one point or another. But there are 10 specific signs that you know, if you identify with some of these, you should probably talk to your doctor. And we have these bookmarks that we hand out to people that know the 10 signs. Memory changes that disrupt your daily life is number one.
Oh, I have that all the time.
Challenges in planning or solving problems where you didn't used to have problems like that. Difficulty completing familiar tasks. If you always used to be able to balance your checkbook without a problem, and suddenly that becomes difficult. Confusion with what time it is or where you're at. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships, and we get into driving and all sorts of other things with that problem. Problems with words and speaking or writing. You know what you want to say, but you can't say it. Losing things on a regular basis. We all lose our keys every once in a while, but if it becomes
Guilty.
habitual. Decreased or poor judgment. Withdrawal from work or social activities, and changes in mood and personality. Someone always used to be happy, and now they're a little more confused or irritable on a regular basis. Those are the 10 signs.
Okay, so those 10 signs. Now, there's a website that
Yes.
people can go to. Let's get that up there.
And the 10 signs, they're there as well. It's alz.org.
Okay.
And we
All right.
have a whole bunch of information there at alz.org.
All right, and we've got the phone number up there. So people who are out there who, if they think that they have a relative, or even possibly think of themselves, that they can call and get some information, get some clarification, and help maybe with where to go for a particular doctor or something like that.
Yeah, and there's a great thing. It's called Alzheimer's Navigator, which starts from our website, alz.org. And families, if they're together over the holidays and notice that mom or dad maybe has some difficulty, they can together, if they're all in one room or if they're all across the country, they can all go to alz.org and look for Alzheimer's Navigator. And that can help them find care and help them really put together a personalized plan for their loved one.
Okay. Hey, Mark, thank you for coming and being on the Live and Learn show. And hopefully we've raised the awareness, the bar of awareness on Alzheimer's for people, and they can get an idea of where to go, and they realize that there is an association here. So thanks for being on the Live and Learn show. And Live and Learn will be back right after this.
What does Medicare cover? How can I afford to keep living in my home? When I need help with house and yard work, who can I turn to? Why am I so tired? Am I eating right? Should I exercise? Where can I go for answers to my questions about aging?
Aging Partners is the place to call when you have questions on aging. Our experts are here to help you with unbiased answers for you or your loved ones. Aging Partners, we're only a phone call away.
Hi, I'm Lita Powell Drake, and welcome back to Live and Learn. If you're retired and you're spending more time at home, does the telephone seem to ring all the time with people wanting something or trying to sell you something, especially that lovely voice that I get every day? Hi, beautiful, light-hearted voice. I'm Rachel from Credit Card Services, and then they start. And whatever button you press, it doesn't work, and they call back and driving you crazy. All right, what's causing this, and what are we going to do about it? We better be on the alert. That's what the people who are here with us today, you probably know them because they've been around Lincoln and the area for a long time. Lily Hans with Triad and Larry Russell with Triad, and we're going to give you some really good information today. Lily, first explain, if we haven't heard of Triad, what is it?
Triad is not an acronym. It is a representation of three parts of our community working together to prevent scams, frauds, and promote safety among seniors. We're strictly a volunteer organization, and we go out and try to educate seniors about scams and frauds. Triad started back in 1947.
It just feels like that.
1997, with seniors and sheriff and police. And there are triads all over the country, but they're all established to work with the community where they feel that the best needs are. We surveyed seniors, and we asked them which was the worst thing that happened to them. And they were afraid of murders and rapes and home invasion and that type of thing. But they weren't afraid of scams and frauds.
Yeah.
So we realized that we'd leave the murders, rapes to the police and the sheriff and law enforcement, but we might be able to educate them about scams and frauds.
And that's what we're going to talk about today is scams, because they're proliferating all over the place. Now, you arrange for the Triad to go to various groups around the city. Would you explain to that? So listen up, if you represent a group, you may want to have them come in and talk to your seniors.
Right. Well, we do. We have a speakers bureau that goes around with a wonderful PowerPoint that was also done by one of our volunteers. And it lists a lot of the scams and frauds that are going on now. Although they are so many, then they proliferate all the time. But we have lots and lots of scams. And they will come and they will talk to you, and they will share our handout material with you. And they also because we like to promote safety, we sponsor the File of Life. Now, the File of Life is a magnetic red envelope that goes on your refrigerator, and in there is a card that lists emergency contacts, and it has medical information, medicines that you take. And the idea behind this is that were you to have an accident or unable to call for help, and the EMTs come, they will take this card with you to the hospital, and then they're able to see what your problem is. So everybody really, especially if you have a chronic illness, live alone, or could use a File of Life, and there's one for everybody.
And where better to put it than on the refrigerator, because even all its stuff on the refrigerator, here it is in case of emergency. It's small, and also it has a little magnetic strip on the back. So
now, this will be available at all senior centers and at the fire stations. So if you don't have one and want one, please go there and you can get them, or you can call and our office, and we will get one to you.
All right, we've been hearing a lot about the grandma scams. You know, the elderly, especially women, are being taken advantage of. Why is it, Lily, that the elderly are the targets right now?
Well, first of all, a lot of older people are lonely. They live alone, and they aren't getting out in the community like they used to, so they're lonely. Secondly, they're also taught to be very polite, and so they are. They also have been very trusting. One of the other things, though, is that a lot of older people, unfortunately, their cognitive ability tends to wane in the older years, unfortunately. But so they may not be making wise decisions, and they may be easily swayed. So that's a big problem. The other thing is that they have money. The older folks have a savings account. They've invested wisely, and they've been taught to be thrifty. They went through the Depression in the 30s, and so they think that they've got money. So that's the thing, you know. If you ask the question that Willie Sutton said, remember?
Yes. Why do they rob banks?
Yeah. And he said,
Because that's where the money
is.
That makes a lot of sense. And the money is with a lot of the grandparents because we have been frugal and we have been saving, and we're kind of forgetting sometimes what we've done with it. So it seems to be focusing on grandparents a lot, especially those telephone calls that from your supposed grandchild who is in a
Exactly.
jail in Ethiopia or something.
Well, Canada is a good one.
Yeah, because it's
or
close,
in the
right.
Bahamas
Yeah.
or someplace
Yeah.
where young people might go. But yes, and then the best thing to do is to not go along with it or ask them questions that you know. I only have girls, granddaughters, you know, and if they think that, then they'll quickly hang up. You have to catch them in some kind of a.
Okay, can you report that? Can you report that telephone
No,
call? You know?
I mean, it's not going to do you any good because they're calling, most of those are calling from out of the country. And so, but that's not the only scam. I mean, there are so many scams that we just, the list goes on and on. But I think you have all heard about the Nigerian letter that says, I'm stuck in Nigeria and I have all this money and I need to get it out of the country. Could you give me your bank account number?
Oh, yes.
And we put the money in there and then you can have part of it. There's a lot of foreign lotteries or sweepstakes. If you haven't entered a sweepstake, you can't win. But a lot of people have been told, oh, you won $1,000 or even $1 million and a couple of them. And so people, well, maybe I did enter. Well, you didn't. You know darn well you didn't. Besides, foreign lotteries or sweepstakes from foreign countries are illegal. So you can't even get one.
Now, are
from
you
them.
talking about receiving this via email,
Email.
or standard mail or the telephone?
All of the above.
So when anybody calls you or writes you and says you've won something, you haven't. Don't fall for it.
Exactly.
How else can you protect yourself, Lily?
Well, to be really careful. I mean, never pay anything for a prize. If they say you've won something and it's free, but you have to pay the shipping or there's a tax on it, it's right. If it's, as you said to begin with, if it's too good to be true, it's not true. I mean, it's got to be a scam. We always say to guard your personal numbers. Don't give out your social security number. Don't give out your bank account numbers, your credit card numbers, any of that sort of stuff.
Well, how do they get this personal information? Are we that gullible that we do
Well,
that?
Our social networking has opened up the whole new world to scammers because they can go online and they can find out who you are, how old you are, and
Speaking of that, then, are we comfortable charging something using our credit card online?
well, that
Okay, there we go.
yeah. Well, you have to know what you are, who you are dealing with. I mean, there are so many look-alike scams. If you get a letter in the mail that says that it's from your bank, it may not be your bank. If they're asking for your bank account number, the bank already has it. So that's correct. Sometimes people just copy the logo and they just send you a letter and expect you to fall for it. Or they'll do that. They'll have counter checks that look just like the regular check, but it doesn't go anywhere except into the scammer's pocket.
And Social Security
Social
numbers,
Security
too. If
numbers.
they're doing that, pretending they're the Social Security Administration and wanting your number and so
Well,
forth.
but that's really more with the Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah,
now
well,
that
look
there's
at-
that new changeover, and they keep saying
Right.
you need a new Medicare card.
Yes.
You don't need a new Medicare card.
Good.
And it will be the same card, and Medicare and the government will not call you. They will not talk. They have your your Medicare number and your Social Security number. They know more about you than you are going to be happy to have
So
them know.
be aware, be alert, and who should they call? What is this red alert, Lily?
Well, red alert is basically if it's free, watch out. if it has to be, you have to make up your mind right now, watch out. If it's all of a sudden I've drawn a blank. But just be careful. You really have to be careful with whatever.
Well, speaking of being careful, this guy, Larry Russell, Deputy Sheriff for how many years?
Almost 39
Almost
years.
30 years.
Dying.
39
39.
years.
Oh, that's your age. No,
Oh,
that's your age.
Thank you.
Larry, with police officer, had his credit card stolen. And how did you deal with that, Mr. Larry?
Well, I'll tell you, Lita, after almost 39 years doing law enforcement and being a servant to the public, assisting every way I could, I went to apply for a loan for an automobile before I retired, and only to discover that I had a discrepancy on my credit account. And to my amazement, it was like 5 years prior. Somebody had gone to a cell phone company in Chicago, which I've never lived in, and applied and got a cell phone. And although the amount was it was under $600 and nothing else
That's not
had
small.
happened. Well, today's day and age, the way they take you for everything. So therefore, it's very fortunate in our triad group. Part of the people that come to our meetings are from the Attorney General's office. And I was, after going through the procedure of filling out the ID theft paperwork and so forth.
It's a nightmare, isn't it?
It is, to go through all of that. Fortunately, I had some assistance from the Attorney General's office. They happen to have a packet already made up that you just go 1, 2, 3, 4 and fill out. And they were very helpful in getting that resolved.
All right. Did you get your result? Did you get your money back?
What happened was we never found out who did it. However, they did in time, and it took almost a year.
Yes, it's a nightmare.
It is.
Absolute nightmare.
For the credit bureau I happened to get a hold of an individual that had retired from the Navy, and he was most helpful. They not only, after sending my whole packet of information of how I lived here since 1966 and how I've never been to Chicago and so forth, after getting all of that, he not only took care of the credit thing, he put a flag on for me for a year, which was very helpful.
But that takes somebody who knows what they're doing, and this is so complicated. The best thing is to avoid it in the first place. But if your credit card or whatever gets stolen, we do have some help for you, and there is a number that you can call. Triad can give you some advice. There it is on your screen. Get a pencil and mark this down if you don't have it. So if you have some of these issues and you want some answers, 402 area code right here in Lincoln, 441-7743. Or they can go to the web, and Lily, what is that web address? That is?
That's lancaster.ne.gov/sheriff-triad.htm.
You got that? Okay, at least there's some help out there. Anything else, any other advice that you just want to wrap this up with, Lily or Larry?
Well, we're always looking for volunteers. If people are interested in helping us, learning about scams and frauds, going out and helping share this information, we'd love to have you. And it's a good group, and
so that's the same number to call then?
Same number. That's a voicemail because we're all volunteers. We don't have staff, even though the phone, somebody will answer within 24 hours and get back to you.
So if you'd like to volunteer, call the number. And Larry?
Well, my last thought would be, here I was a law enforcement officer for all those years, and I was amazed that I had my identity stolen. Do not be afraid to report it. There's so many people that have this done, and they're so embarrassed that they just don't want to have anybody to know that they were taken. But the avenues that law enforcement has today with the getting recovery and assisting, that's what I would do. I'd make sure I reported it.
Good advice. You learned the hard way, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Lily, thank you. She's been involved with them for 16 years with Triad.
Larry and I both, got training on Triad together.
You've both been there for 16 years, and what have you learned?
Not enough.
And it keeps changing.
It does.
Just like the seasons are changing right now, the scammers and the frauders change all the time. They're coming up with you. They're really very creative. Too bad they don't put that creativity to some positive effort. Wouldn't that be marvelous?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't live in a perfect world. Thank you for watching Live and Learn. Thank you very much. Very good information for our viewers. And we'll be right back right after this word on Live and Learn.
What does Medicare cover? How can I afford to keep living in my home? When I need help with house and yard work, who can I turn to? Why am I so tired? Am I eating right? Should I exercise? Where can I go for answers to my questions about aging?
Aging Partners is the place to call when you have questions on aging. Our experts are here to help you with unbiased answers for you or your loved ones. Aging Partners, we're only a phone call away.
Welcome back to Live and Learn. I'm Dolores Lintel, and I have the pleasure today of introducing our new host to Live and Learn. He's Tim Francis, and we're going to find out a little bit today about what makes Tim Francis. Tell us about yourself.
I'll just tell you a little bit. There's just enough. But I grew up in Northeast Lincoln.
Okay.
And always kind of watched what was going on as a kid. I was very observant of things going on, and have always lived in Lincoln then. Worked for a long time for a Lincoln Action Program, and that got me involved with neighborhood activities and advocating and landlord-tenant law, and used to advise low-income elderly people how to access services, and that as you're helping other people figure things out, you figure out things for yourself.
Right.
You know, I learn a lot of good, clever things from my young friends, but it's my older friends who really teach me.
So, as an interested and involved observer of the community, I think you have many interests.
Oh, sure.
And many hobbies.
Oh, yes.
And so you will bring a lot of things to our program that are of interest to our audience. So tell us about some of your interests that surround you and some of the things you enjoy.
My family were always, my father and mother bought and sold antiques as a hobby. My dad liked houses. I grew up liking houses, old things. And so when I bought a home, I was attracted to an older neighborhood. So I bought a home in Malone neighborhood, and that got me involved with the Northeast Radio Project 30 years ago. And then I learned about city programs and tax base and preserving the tax base. And I recruited friends to buy houses around me because there were such good opportunities, as there still are. And then I became involved with neighborhood housing services. So, you know, Dolores, one thing builds on the next, on the next, on the next.
Well, you live in a historic part of Lincoln with the Hawley neighborhood.
Yes, the Hawley Landmark District and the Hawley Neighborhood Association. I believe it was Lincoln's first subdivision. You know, there used to be racetracks down there where Malone Center is.
Yeah, it's interesting to know the history of
it is, and we live in such a fast-paced world, which is fun. It has its place, but there's so much knowledge to be gained if you have the patience to sit. And I spent a lot of time as a kid with my grandparents, great aunts, and you just kind of sit and listen and listen. And I don't know, generally they were more interesting than my peers. They were fun for certain things, but.
Well, and I think from an observer's point of view, you have been able to put together a base of what makes Lincoln work.
Well, yes, and it's all so accessible if you choose to, because Lincoln's such a great town. And you wonder, well, how does certain things come to pass? Who labored to make this happen? Who built that?
The behind-the-scenes people who have moved Lincoln forward.
Yes,
in
and
a
lot of them are not very well known or credited, and so those are lots of interesting stories.
Now, did you serve on any community boards or any
over the years?
organizations?
Over the years, I have,
Okay.
and neighborhood housing services, and I've been involved with lots of different little groups, and neighborhood associations, and Red Cross at one time, and.
So you have a broad interest in the community as a whole.
I maintain that in Lincoln there's about 0.5 degree of separation.
Okay.
There aren't any. It's hard to keep secrets.
Yeah, we're a small town.
We are
a big small town.
We're a big small town.
Yeah. So what do you plan to bring to Live and Learn audience? Your experiences that would be of interest to them.
I want to interview women who've been kind of overlooked, past the age of 60, who've done civic things, they've run businesses, they've launched things, probably while they're fathers and brothers and husbands were being a little bit dismissive. And so I think that I've got a long list of people I think would have some really fun stories to tell us.
Okay. Well, we're certainly looking forward to having you on the crew that brings all this to our audience, and welcome.
Thank you. I
to
think it's going
Live
to be
and
a
Learn.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
Dolores.
And we will return in a minute.
What does Medicare cover? How can I afford to keep living in my home? When I need help with house and yard work, who can I turn to? Why am I so tired? Am I eating right? Should I exercise? Where can I go for answers to my questions about aging?
Aging Partners is the place to call when you have questions on aging. Our experts are here to help you with unbiased answers for you or your loved ones. Aging Partners, we're only a phone call away.
I'm Tim Francis, and our guest today on Live and Learn is Jan Gallagher, known to 80% of Lancaster County people.
Oh, especially those over 70.
Especially. Jan was a 4-term Lancaster County Commissioner.
Right.
And the first woman elected.
First woman elected to any county office in Lancaster County, and the first woman in the state of Nebraska to be either elected as a commissioner or a supervisor. I didn't know that when I ran, but I found out shortly after.
You've been involved in a lot of civic activities in the 50 years you've lived in Lincoln.
Right.
What got you started in that?
Well, I grew up in a family that put high importance on voting. So when I moved to Lincoln, I knew nothing about Nebraska government or local government, and I was frustrated about trying to vote because I really didn't know what I was doing. So an acquaintance told me that I should join the League of Women Voters, and then I would learn about the local government and learn about the state government, and so I did, and I did learn.
And what'd you learn?
Well, I learned that it's very important for people to be involved in government and to pay attention to government because not enough people do. So that interested me, and it gave me something intellectually stimulating to do because we studied government and came to consensus on different issues, and then we lobbied for those issues.
Well, and you would meet interesting, like-minded, engaged people.
Yes, I did, which, you know, for a mother of 4 children was very stimulating. So that was kind of what got me interested in government, I think, was really the League of Women Voters.
They were kind of in the forefront of organizing, weren't they? When things were a little more closed or women were a little more dismissed as participants in things?
Well, yeah, that was a time where, you know, many men thought that we should be home in the kitchen and not in the halls of government, but I think that's changed over the years.
But you've been kind of a part of that change a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
What prompted you to run for county commissioner when you did? What year was that, 1980 or something like that?
Yeah, 81, I think.
Not very long ago.
Well,
30 years,
yeah.
not a long time.
Well, what happened was that I had served as president of the League of Women Voters, and we had done a study of county government. We'd worked on city government for a long time, but had not really paid much attention to the county. And so when we did this study, we interviewed many of the county officials and tried to, you know, find out where the money came from and where the money went. And whereas the people in city government at that time were very cooperative in giving us all kinds of information, the county was like, why do you want to know, you know? And at that time, the county budget was in the clerk's office, but there were only 3 copies. And if you wanted to know about the county budget, you had to come down to the clerk's office and look at one of their copies. You couldn't take it home. If you wanted to have any portion of it reproduced, you had to pay so much a page for it. But it was not available in libraries or any place. You know, they really didn't want anybody to pay attention to it, I don't think. So anyway, this kind of spurred not just me, but others that we really needed to make some changes in county government, and they urged me to run and finally convinced me that it was possible for me to do that. So I did run. I ran as a Republican candidate for county commissioner. And at that time, there were just 3. There are now 5, but at that time, there were just 3. So that's history.
Well, it's an interesting history. And organizing a campaign is kind of a big effort, is it not?
Well, it was very interesting. I'd never worked on a campaign and didn't really know what you were supposed to do, but I had some really good people that knew a lot more about it than I did and helped me, and we worked very hard.
You've been involved in other things beyond that, though, outside of your county commissioner. You were a tri-chair on our Antelope Valley.
Right.
How did you get dragged into that?
I think the mayor asked me. And Colleen Singh, who's a good friend of mine, was also one of the tri-chairs. So.
And that's been a 25-year project, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
It's just now
Yeah.
bearing fruit, isn't it?
I hope everyone goes down and walks it because it is a beautiful place, just beautiful. And that's kind of unusual when it's just brand new. You can imagine how gorgeous it's going to be in another 5 or 10 years.
And that really served 3 purposes, didn't it, that
Yeah.
particular project?
Yeah. Community redevelopment, public works, and
Flood control.
flood control, which was probably
The primary.
the primary reason, yeah.
That was kind of the opposite of the Northeast Radial perspective because it was a grounds-up
Yeah.
planning process
Right,
instead of
right, yeah.
top-down. And you're on the Lincoln Housing Authority board
Yes,
still?
I am. Yes, I am.
And you've done that for
Quite a few years, 10 or 12.
right, and it's been a successful enterprise.
Yes, it is. It's a very successful. We have good staff. They provide good services to the lower income people who need housing assistance. Yeah.
And brings in a lot of federal money.
Yes, it does.
Happens to benefit property owners.
Right. It does.
Incidentally.
Yes. Right.
Now, while you're doing all this, you also started a business.
Yes, I did.
Over 30 years ago.
Yes, 32 to be exact.
And it's an engaged business. It's still being
Yes.
operated by your daughter. Is
Yes,
that right?
that's right.
Tell us how you came to start that consignment store.
Well, at that time in government, a lot of other elected officials thought that I didn't know very much because I'd not been in business. And I often heard from others that, well, Jan, if you just had to meet a payroll, then you'd understand these things better. So I thought, well, I'm going to need to do something else to keep myself busy. And I decided I either was going to have a business or I was going to go to law school. And I had an opportunity to buy an existing business, which a woman from Omaha had started. And so I didn't know very much about the consignment business, but I thought it would be a good thing for me to try because in the consignment business, you don't own the inventory. You in a sense, the consignors loan it to you. And if you sell it, then you share the profits with the owner. And if you don't sell it, they can come back and pick it up, or we donate a lot to other charitable organizations. So that got me started, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I should have had better preparation, but I was lucky.
Well, you've ended up having 2 locations at one time and owning
Yeah.
2 buildings.
Yes, I did.
And your other daughter has in Portland?
Yeah, Portland, Oregon. She has 2 stores that are very successful.
So this really could be Gallagher and Daughters
It could be, yes.
Incorporated.
Yeah.
You don't see that too often.
No, and we call it OMT, Divine Women's Resale.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's the name of the Lincoln business.
Do you have any observations for young women today wanting to get involved with business or civic activities, or you witness any differences in the culture and civic discourse?
Well, I think it's much easier for women in both politics and business. Not that it's ever easy, because I could not have started my business if my husband and I had not owned a home, because I had to put up that as collateral for a business loan. And I don't know if it's probably still that way. You just have to be realistic. And I knew that I wasn't taking a huge chance, because I wasn't borrowing a lot of money, so it wasn't too frightening. But I think women are much better educated, and I think they're much braver than we were, 50 years ago. So I think young women need to respect the efforts that their mothers and grandmothers went to provide better opportunities for them, because they really do have much better opportunities.
Well, and sons should acknowledge that as well.
Yes, exactly.
What about civic activity? Do you see things, as you're still engaged and you're still participating in things, do you see things with Facebook and the internet that makes things different, better?
Well, it makes it much faster. I'm barely technically. I could do what I need to do on the computer, but I don't try to do anything else, just what I have to do. So my daughters keep up with the social media. I don't really do very much with that. But, you can communicate so fast now with anybody, anywhere.
So there's no more mimeograph machines for newsletters
Yeah.
and leafleting door to door.
Oh, I think that's still done, and I think I think that's still the best way, because people like to see a real person. So.
What are your plans for the next 4 or 5 years
with just myself?
Yourself, your family, the business, what
yeah.
you participate in?
Well, I have a son in Kansas City. I have my daughter, as we mentioned, in Portland, Oregon, so I like to go and see them occasionally or have them come here. I garden a lot. That keeps me involved. I volunteer for a number of different things. I'm on the board of Voices of Hope, which used to be called the Rape Spouse Abuse Center. And that's a wonderful organization that I really, really believe in and want to prosper, because it's the only agency in Lincoln that really deals with abused women. So it's very important, and I just keep busy.
Well, and that's a gift to all of us, because you have such a base of knowledge between your work with the county, different civic organizations. You, like so many people over 60 or 70 or whatever demarcation we're talking about,
Right.
you bring a big base of knowledge, and it's generous of you to share that with everyone else.
Well, I love it, so it's not difficult at all.
And this is Tim Francis with Live and Learn, and we'll be right back in a moment. Thank you.
What does Medicare cover? How can I afford to keep living in my home? When I need help with house and yard work, who can I turn to? Why am I so tired? Am I eating right? Should I exercise? Where can I go for answers to my questions about aging?
Aging Partners is the place to call when you have questions on aging. Our experts are here to help you with unbiased answers for you or your loved ones. Aging Partners, we're only a phone call away.
Welcome to our third segment on the topic of Parkinson's disease on Live and Learn. I'm Kristen Stoes, and I'm pleased to introduce my guest, Dr. Ben Gelber, who has been practicing surgery in Lincoln since 1979 and has received additional training in deep brain stimulation surgery, which we will talk about today. Welcome, Dr. Gelber.
Thank you.
Could you please tell us about your medical training in this technique of deep brain stimulation?
Well, my physician's assistant, Todd Sorensen, and I decided that we would start a deep brain stimulation program because we thought it was interesting and we thought it would be something good for the community. So we spent about a year getting set up to do it. Interestingly enough, the technique is very similar to some other things we do in neurosurgery, such as brain biopsies and shunts. And we culminated our training by going out to the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, and spending some time with Dr. Razai and his fellows. They have one of the largest programs in the country and had done over 800 cases by the time we were there to visit. And once we came back from that few days that we spent with them, we felt we were ready to go.
Yes, I'm sure. So how long have you been doing this kind of surgery in Lincoln?
We started about 5 years ago.
About 5 years. What are the specific symptoms of Parkinson's disease that this kind of surgery is effective in treating?
Well, the three main symptoms of Parkinson's disease are tremor, rigidity and bradykinesia. And bradykinesia refers to the slowness of movement that people with Parkinson's disease have.
Okay.
The treatment is effective for all three of these things. It's best for the tremor, but it does help for the rigidity and the bradykinesia.
And can you explain that a little further? Because as a non-medical person, I can understand how it could affect a tremor, but I think the rigidity part is a little confusing to me.
Well, if you see people with Parkinson's disease, you can see that often they're very stiff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a facial expression that fits with their emotions.
Right.
And sometimes they even have a phenomenon called freezing, where they're walking and suddenly they just stop and they can't move.
Okay.
The deep brain stimulation many times will improve all those symptoms or augment the improvement that people get with medication.
I see. That's wonderful. It's amazing. Is this kind of surgery used to treat other neurological diseases as well?
Yes. Now, it's FDA approved for essential tremor. It's also approved on what's called a humanitarian device exemption for obsessive compulsive disease, which is a psychiatric disease.
Okay.
And research is being done into the use of it for depression.
Really? Oh my goodness, that's very interesting. What characteristics in a Parkinson's patient makes them a good candidate for deep brain stimulation?
That's a more complex question. Originally, people thought that it should be used only as late in the disease when the medications stopped working.
Okay.
But with more experience, it's been found that if you use it earlier in the disease, it augments the medication so that the medication dose can often be diminished. And it also decreases, or I shouldn't say that, it lengthens the amount of time before some of the medication side effects show up. So now although we still do it in many older patients, it's nice to see some younger patients also. Now, on the other hand, if somebody's very well controlled with drugs, then there's really no need to undergo surgery.
I see, I see. So there really is no optimum time for a patient to go through this surgery. Sooner is just as good as later in the disease process?
Well, I think it's a negotiation between the surgeon, the doctor, meaning the patient's primary doctor, and the patient themselves, and the neurologist also.
Certainly.
And we discuss what we think would be best for the patient, and of course the patient gets the final vote.
Always. I understand that the patient needs to be off of their Parkinson's medications for a time before the surgery, and they also need to be awake for the first portion of the surgery. Can you explain why these things are required?
Well, we like to see them off their Parkinson's medications for 24 hours before one of the interviews in the office, before we do anything, because we'd like to see how bad they are, and we'd like to see the response they get to their Parkinson's drugs. The patients who get a good response to their Parkinson's drugs do better than the ones who don't.
I see.
And so we'd like to get an idea of this. Now, once we've selected a patient who's a good candidate, we'd like to have them off their drugs so that during the surgery we can assess their response to the implantation of the electrode. And so they only need to be off for 24 hours.
I see, I see. But so during the surgery, the patient is awake, and they can, what do they tell you during surgery as you're operating that will lead you to believe that you are implanting the device in the correct place or need to change it a little?
We put the electrode through a small opening in the skull, and we use a fancy computerized navigation system, which is really kind of like a GPS system, to place the electrode down to the correct target. But everybody's brain is a little bit different. So even if we put it in what we think is the correct target, the only way we know that it really works is to stimulate through the electrode. So we have a device that looks like a TV remote that we hook up to the electrode and we turn it on. And if the patient's Parkinson's symptoms such as tremor or rigidity improve, then we know we're in the right place. If they don't improve, then we know we're not in the right place, and then we just have to decide how we want to move it. We can move it up, we can move it down, we can move it left or right. But the time to do that is during the operation, because once we're finished, there are some things we can change, but we don't have the flexibility we have during the procedure.
I see, I see. So that the patient is really a very important component of this to let you know.
Yes.
Exactly where it's being placed. Approximately what size are these devices, and where are they placed in the body?
The electrode is placed through a hole which we make in the skull. The hole is 14 millimeters in size. And so most of the people watching this will probably remember a rotary dial telephone. And the size of the hole is about the same as the finger hole of a rotary dial
All right.
telephone. The electrode is just a small wire, less than a millimeter in diameter, and the length of it is, well, it's about 10 inches or so,
Okay.
but only a small portion of that goes into the brain.
I see. I see. After the device is placed, is there follow-up care that's required?
Yes, we put in the device, and then a week later we bring the patient back and put the battery or pulse generator system, which is similar to what people have with a cardiac pacemaker, and we attach that to the electrode that we placed in the brain. Then we wait a month, let everything heal up, and after a month we have them come back to our office and we turn the pulse generator system on, and then we program it. And the programming is mostly trial and error, so it takes several sessions. We have a monthly clinic at our office where we have people come in and we check their programming. They don't need to come every month, but often early on they come every month for 2, maybe 3 visits until we get it to an optimum position. Because with the program, we can change which contact we use on the electrode. There are 4 contacts, so we can move up and down by changing the contact. And you can also change the stimulation frequency and the stimulation pulse width and the voltage. So there are 4 parameters we can change. And you can imagine how many combinations that leads to.
Yes, yes. So it takes multiple visits to get this
and it gives us a lot of flexibility. In the old days, we had a similar procedure where we would make a hole in the brain where the tremor control target is.
I see.
The trouble with that is once it's done and you can't change it.
Sure.
With the deep brain stimulator electrode, you have quite a bit of flexibility.
Yes, much
and
better.
finally, if it doesn't work, you can give up and pull the whole thing out, whereas if you make a hole in the brain, it's permanent.
Certainly, certainly. What are the risks of this surgery?
There are risks. It's pretty safe, and we've had pretty good luck with it. Infection, which runs about 2%, and bleeding, which also runs about 2%. I think infection is a little bit less, about 1.5%. And then the third would be the risk that it doesn't work. And then it's a mechanical device, so there are mechanical things that can go wrong. Electrode can break, it can fail. And then the other thing is the battery is good at best for 5 years. So then after the battery wears down, just like in a pacemaker, cardiac pacemaker, then the patient needs to have the battery changed, which is an outpatient surgical procedure.
Okay, all right. As Parkinson's disease progresses in the patient, is the effectiveness of this device compromised then over time?
Well, the device itself continues to work, but Parkinson's is a progressive disease, and the device does nothing to prevent the progression of the disease.
All right, yes, I understand that. We were able to speak with a patient of yours, Bonnie Carr, who suffers with essential tremor, but she has had your deep brain stimulation surgery. We'd like to watch a short clip now of how she uses the device and hear how it has changed her life.
That's on.
I had to reset or something.
Yeah. Okay. And then this will be off.
All right.
Okay.
Now,
all right. So
now hold both hands out.
But I'm gonna.
Now.
Oh, there isn't a way.
Just hold it. Hold it with one hand.
It would flop all over. It really would.
Okay. Now let's have you try to write your name here.
See, it'll get better after it's off for a while, but still not good.
So you try to write your name.
Oh boy, this is something. I haven't done this for a while. Okay. Now it takes a little bit and It's back on.
Now, let's have you drink the water again.
Oh, I can drink that just fine.
And then let's see you write your name for us.
Oh, that'll be easy. Now, it'll be easy.
Thank you so much for demonstrating this amazing device to us
Well,
today.
you're welcome.
And I understand you had your surgery a year and a half ago.
Yes.
My goodness. Does the device control your symptoms at a really consistent level throughout the day?
Oh, yes.
So there's no on-off kind of thing, the way medication might.
Oh, no. If you took pills to help it, I mean, they could work for when you first took them, and then it would be, there would be no control. Where this is all day. The very
So this
day.
has allowed you to be totally off your medication, is
Oh,
that true?
right. Oh, yes. I don't take any medication.
And can you feel this device working in any way?
No, only when you turn it on, you'll feel kind of you feel that it goes. I mean, you know that it went on. But after it's on for a little bit, that all goes away. You don't feel anything. It's just like any other.
Okay, all right. And you turn this device off at night, is that?
All right.
All right, and why is that?
The only reason I do that is to save, that helps this battery here
I
last
see.
longer.
Okay, so you have a battery in the device that's implanted, and that battery lasts about 5 years, is
Right.
that what we've been told?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This had to be a really big decision for you to make, to have this surgery. How long did it take you to make that decision after you had heard about the deep brain stimulation?
I had taken medicine to stop the tremor for quite a while. And finally, one day, there was this friend that came to our house, and he said, Bonnie, you know, really, you should go see Dr. Gilbert because I think he could help you. But he didn't say how.
Okay.
And I went to him. I came here, and when he told me brain surgery, I thought, whoa, I don't think I want to do that. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, I can't live the rest of my life shaking. I've got to have something done. So that's when I decided. And it was my right hand that shook worse.
Okay.
And they fixed that, and 2 months later, they fixed the other side. And so
Yay.
I have both hands that don't
My
shake.
goodness.
And it's great. I mean, to write, I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't hardly send a Christmas card. And going out to eat was really embarrassing.
Sure, sure.
And so this here was
So this has really given you your life back. And
oh, yes, it has. I mean, I can't thank Dr. Gilbert enough because I wouldn't be able to go on like I was. It was really bad.
Tell me, you are awake for a portion of this surgery, is that true?
That's right.
Is that frightening?
No.
That didn't frighten you?
No.
Okay, all right.
I'm not afraid.
Okay.
I just have faith that everything will be okay. And it was. It was okay.
So really, what has this surgery meant to you for your life?
I am so happy that I came here, and I'm so happy that I decided to do it, and I couldn't have went on without it.
And I understand you enjoy horses, is that
Oh,
true?
yes. Yes.
So you're able to work with your horses now,
And
which
take
you
care of them.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh. Do
And
some
go-
traveling.
Yes. We're leaving Tuesday to go to the
Oh.
Nationals.
Well, good. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I think this has just been amazing, and we can't thank you enough for sharing your story today.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
We do want to thank Bonnie for her very important contribution to the show today.
Dr. Gelber, even though Bonnie's disease is different from Parkinson's, is this the exact same surgery that is effective in Parkinson's patients?
We have three different targets that we use. For tremor, we use what's called the ventral intermediate nucleus of the thalamus. We call it VIM for short, because nobody wants to say a long word like that.
That's right.
An electrode placed in VIM will be good for tremor, whether the disease is essential tremor or the disease is Parkinsonian tremor.
All right.
We have another target for Parkinson's disease called the subthalamic nucleus, and again a long word, so we call that STN for short.
Okay.
And if we put the electrode in STN, that controls tremor and rigidity and bradykinesia. There's another target, the globus pallidus, which we call GPI, and if we use that as a target, it not only helps with Parkinson's disease, but it also may control a different neurologic disease called dystonia.
I see.
So we can customize the target depending on the patient's disease. And there's some new work being done where patients are having electrodes placed in more than one target on the same side of the brain. We haven't done that yet.
Really?
But we will.
I see. So it's the same device, it's just the placement that is different.
That's right.
All right, that's very interesting. Do Parkinson's patients have less need for their Parkinson's meds after this surgery?
Unfortunately, they can't stop their medications.
Okay.
But in the best case, we can decrease the medications to about half the dose. And as I said earlier, that lengthens the amount of time before some of the complications of the medications come on. And I don't mean the number of hours in the day, but I mean the number of years it may take before the complications of the Parkinson's medications set in.
So this does really buy the patient some time in the effectiveness of their medications.
Yes.
Yes, that would be very important. What are there side effects to the device? We know there are side effects to Parkinson's medications, but what would the side effects be of this device?
Well, there are side effects to everything.
Sure.
The first thing is, of course, there's the pulse generator or battery, which goes either here or here. And you can feel it under the skin, and we've had some men who like to hunt. So we want to make sure that we place the battery on the side opposite where they place their rifles so that it doesn't get in their way.
Really? Interesting.
During the programming, people can get numbness and tingling in their face or in their hand. It's usually temporary, lasting a minute or two.
Okay.
But if we don't program it properly, that could persist, and that would require a change in programming. Likewise, with the programming, we watch for side effects like slurred speech or double vision. But those things are easily corrected by changing the programming on the device.
So follow-up visits are always necessary.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Do these devices always provide symptomatic relief? Is there a good success rate for this surgery in Parkinson's patients?
We've had very good luck with the ones we've done, and the literature shows about 80% relief of tremor, 60% of people get relief of rigidity, and 40% of bradykinesia. That's the slowness of movement.
I see, I see. That's a very good success rate, and I'm sure for the patient it's very welcome.
It's even better for essential tremor. I don't think we've had any treatment failures with essential tremor.
Really? Isn't that interesting? Is this procedure covered by insurance?
Yes, the procedure was approved by the FDA over 10 years ago, and it's covered by Medicare, and Blue Cross and Blue Shield covers it. Every insurance policy is different, but for the most part, it is covered.
Do you see more and more of these kinds of devices for all kinds of ailments being kind of the future of medicine? It just seems like we have pacemakers for hearts, and we have this, and I've heard of neurostimulators for back pain. Is this kind of the future of medicine?
Well, there's a lot of technological improvements in the area called neuromodulation, which is what this is.
All right.
And we have other techniques such as vagal nerve stimulation for seizures, and you've mentioned a couple of the others, so I'd say technology moves forward.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I think this is just totally amazing. I truly do. It's been fascinating to hear from you and to certainly see the clip of Bonnie today. Lincoln is so fortunate, I think, to have this kind of surgical procedure available locally. It gives the patients options, which that's always a good thing. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Gelber.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. These 3 segments on Parkinson's disease have certainly shown all of us that it's never too late to live and learn. Thank you.